Cool. I think we can start the discussion. So yeah, again, hi all. I'm Gabriela, one of the product managers at Eskimi. This is a panel discussion, how to score big with in-game during World Cup. It is a part of Agency World Cup Championship, which is powered by Anzo and Eskimi, which is essentially a celebration of the in-game growth and the upcoming World Cup. However, during this championship, we're thinking how to actually dig a bit deeper and how to invite agencies to understand how they can use in-game advertising during the World Cup. And we thought that, like, what is there a better way to do it than inviting leading market experts and to talk with them, ask many questions. I definitely have a lot of them, and I hope that the attendees will have even more, and to actually dig deeper into the topic, how agencies, clients can score big within game, what are the best practices. So this is why we invited Hendrik, a brand and agency sales director from Anzu, to be the market representative and answer all of these questions. So hi, Hendrik.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Cool. So before we jump into the main questions, I really wanted to allow you to present yourself to the attendees. So could you give us a brief overview about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name is Hamlet. I'm from Germany. I live in Hamburg. I've been in digital marketing for the past 20 years, and I've joined Anzu in 2019 as a brand and agency sales director. I've been ever since working very closely with global brands and advertising agencies and networks on their approach to gaming. We are looking at the biggest entertainment channel in the world. Billions, literally billions of people that are gaming on a regular level, that are bringing a lot of their passion and attention to a new medium that is, in my personal view, not yet leveraged enough by advertisers in order to pay a tribute to how much eyeballs and time are actually going into this.
Cool, thanks. And you were saying that in-game is not used enough by the advertisers, but could you actually give us an understanding about what is in-game ads? Sometimes I feel that, in-game might be misunderstood by some other ad type. So could you, maybe visualize it in a way that our attendees would understand what are we talking about when we are talking about in-game?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's obviously a lot of different conceptions, and there's obviously different kinds of and types of ads that you can run on mobile devices, on PC games, and maybe even on console games. The classical approach to gaming, as it first scaled in mobile, was an approach of banner ads that would appear on top of the game, outside of the game. And these you can still very easily book. You have rewarded video ads that you can add like a kind of an ad break on a mobile game or a mobile app. And these different types of ads that still are very prominent today. The kind of approach that we have not originally invented, but that we have or feel like we have optimized it, is that of intrinsic in-game advertising, which is ads organically appearing inside of the games as if they were, or factually they are, an actual part of the game. They are rendered by the 3D game engines and are appearing as a part of the gameplay, hence also being an organic piece of the puzzle here that has a lot to do with actually filling these virtual worlds and these games with assets from the real life.
Cool. At least from the market, I really enjoy when in-game is a bit compared like with digital out of home, because it is somewhat of a reality in a what way, and the ads are served as a billboard, for example, or on a building. So sometimes the market, we hear that it's like a virtual out-of-home ad.
Yeah, very much so. And that's kind of the charming part of it, that advertisers have been advertising out of home for literally hundreds of years, whether it's a sign outside of my shop back in ancient Rome, or it's a digital LED ad on a building in a popular tourist area. So these types of ads and these type of ad placements are actually very prominent and are very well known. With the difference now that we are transporting them into a virtual space, and the virtual space can obviously be a game, any kind of game vertical really, but it also will definitely include the virtual spaces that we'll see emerging in the coming probably decades when we move into however shaped and formed metaverse.
Nice, yeah, looking forward for the future. And cool, so the intro was really great and informative. Let's dig deeper into the main topic. At least from what I see in the digital landscape, it feels that global events such as the World Cup is becoming and is actually an arena for advertisers to compete for the attention of the customers. Do you agree with that statement, and why do you think this is happening?
Well, of course, it's always been like that, and not only in sports, but in any kind of media environment, really, where you have the most people and the most eyes on a topic. It's obviously interesting for brands to play a role, to play their part, and to leverage that for their brand, to create sympathy, to create awareness, to create engagement with fans, with consumers. And the World Cup and everything around it, basically football as being the biggest sports game played in the world, has always been very attractive. But this attractiveness also comes with a lot of downsides, which obviously is it's becoming very expensive to play a part in this space, and increasingly crowded. Especially this year is a historic exception. The World Cup usually takes place in the summertime, which is in Germany we have a saying, we call it the so-called summer hole. It's like an empty space where not a lot of marketing is going on because most people go on vacation. This year we have the exact opposite happening. The World Cup is during the weeks leading up to Christmas, which are anyway the most booked and the most intense advertising times of the year. So there's a huge clash right now.
Yeah, and when you said about like the increasing prices, the first thing that popped into my mind is like the Super Bowl. Like advertisers pay like millions to place their video, but at least for me, the beauty is in the ad. Like how much of creativity that do advertisers take to like create really nice content, which is never seen in any of the advertising space. So yeah, so there is some downside, so but you can definitely see the creativity part that is happening through this event.
Oh, definitely. And I think we're currently standing at around $7 million for half a minute of advertising in the Super Bowl. Prices at the World Cup, obviously, there's a lot more games and a lot more exposure to be gained. But it's a similar situation because we have a very timely event, a limited amount of time that is to be sold, that is to be occupied and leveraged. And we have, of course, a very high degree of sympathy and passion for this game, for the event, for everything around it. So also, and personally, I've worked a lot in creative agencies and with creative teams. Of course, this is a huge opportunity to also become more creative and become more outlandish with the creatives and with the approaches and the concepts that you have, because you have this huge opportunity, and because also many advertisers are active in this space in such a short amount of time, you really, really need to stand out much more than you would normally have to in a, let's say, average advertising environment.
Yeah, that's true. And talking about in-game, do you see that advertisers run in-game ads during World Cup?
100%, and it's kind of an obvious choice, especially with sports games, not only football games, which we see have a tremendous increase in traction, which see a lot more users leading up to the event, which is definitely due to the global excitement around it, and people are really, the national leagues have come to a halt. The team players are, joining their national teams. There's a lot of preparation. The national sponsors, the international sponsors, the tournament sponsors, everybody creates a hype cycle that is pretty much unparalleled. So everybody is getting in the mood, literally, much like people are getting in the mood for Christmas and are starting to decorate their houses and start doing Christmas shopping. So here's, again, a big clash of attention and a kind of a clash of an internal struggle, what you want to stick with. But in the gaming space, you see people using that time leading up to the World Cup to prepare themselves, maybe mentally, but also start playing the tournament for themselves and start playing the games beforehand on a virtual level before the actual players are competing in the Qatar.
Yeah, and you mentioned that advertisers tend to go in-game because of the attention. Is there other reasons why they use in-game during the World Cup?
The motivations vary very much, I would believe, from the different briefings I've seen. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity right now. In-game advertising is a little bit harder to access than other popular media channels like television, whether it's linear or on demand. And the classical, I would say, news channels that you have that are revolving around these types of events. But in-game is also very accessible now with dynamic platforms such as ours, which allow for a very timely activation, a very focused activation on the environments that will catch exactly those audiences that you are interested when you want to advertise during this time. But also left and right of the core football audience, you have a lot of interest being sparked in different audiences. Here, particularly in Germany, we had a great World Cup here in 2006. And we saw that all of a sudden, the entire population was really infatuated with the sports, with the tournaments. And in the years after and the tournaments after, we saw, for example, a lot more females joining public viewing, enjoying football and going to the tournaments. Similar to the rise actually in women's football attention that we have following the amazing Women's European Cup in England last year. So it's an evolvement of audience movement and audience attention that's going on, and at the same time we have even more advertisers getting interested, especially if you look at the female target audience. You have female brands that are looking to leverage this event now as well, and that are bidding for the same ad space that beforehand might have been occupied by male-dominated brands.
Yeah, I'm really happy that the whole perception of the gamer changed. Like, it's not, the stereotypical young boy in a garage playing games. It's like the gamer audience is really unique and broad. So this is really cool. And you mentioned about the briefings that you get from agencies. Do you see any difference between what is the brief during these special events and the usual in-game advertising during non-event period? Can you compare?
Yeah, I mean, we touched upon the creative aspect of the campaigns, and this can be creativity in a media conceptual sense, but it can be also the core creative, the creative idea. So what we definitely see more are more creative and more out of the box ideas that are happening, that are now finding the right focus and to stick out. But at the same time, also alternative media concepts are taking place, where advertisers kind of have to branch out a little bit out of their comfort zone in order to make sure that they're being heard, they're being seen. So these briefings vary a little bit, but what you can definitely tell across the board is that they're getting more creative, and they're getting also more timely and more, I would say, urgent. The media planning has become a lot more close circle, a little bit more urgent in terms of timings, since people are reacting to outer influences, political, geopolitical, but also even local and national news that are doing different headlines. And of course, across the world, the focus is quite different between what's going on in the United States right now, for example, compared to what's going on in Europe and might be going on in Asia or the Middle East. So advertisers have to react on a very dynamic level. Digital advertising technology has certainly given them a lot of leverage in order to do that, in order to become more flexible. So now the challenge is to make it work the best way they can.
Yeah, it's a difficult but interesting time to do advertising, essentially. And do you see any change in how in-game advertising evolved through the years during these events, or like specifically the World Cup? What happened during these past few years when we are talking about event-based advertising?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that also the gaming space, of course, has been evolving, and new technologies have arrived, and that advertiser monetization, which was not an issue for many publishers for a long, long time, is now becoming really relevant. This has to do with the changing landscape in gaming, where more games, more and more titles, more and more programmers are bringing their content to the crowd. So you have to become more innovative and more creative with your content as well, which means in football, we see it for football tournaments. Of course, in tennis, we see it with tennis games that are pointing towards or are pointifying their offering towards Grand Slam tournaments, for example, to leverage the extra attention and the extra audience that's happening. So these dynamics are additionally interesting, not only for the games in order to monetize, but of course also for advertisers in order to take that increased attention and use it for their own.
Yeah, so it's interesting what you're saying is that both advertisers and the publishers have to step into the game, think maybe a bit out of the box to actually win against their competition. It's not because the market is now really like competitive, and essentially if they want to get the bigger portion, they have to think out of the box and take that extra step to reach better results. And then talking about that maximization and effectiveness, how brands could maximize in-game advertising during World Cup. Could you give any practical cases how advertisers should use in-game so they would get the most out of it and the best results?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our core objective as a company is to bring broad digital intelligence and advertising standards to the in-game space. Most importantly, and at the forefront, it's certainly viewability. You create an opportunity to see an ad every time you bring an ad into a game, whichever way you do it. But certainly it's most important to find out how does that opportunity to see turn out and turn into an actual viewable ad placement that will have some sort of impact. We have the great opportunity, the great advantage that gaming has this really lean forward and immersed use case for consumers that are really so engaged in their content that they most likely will have an impact once they see an ad. But it's also quite important to kind of integrate all of these approaches into an ecosystem that goes along with the rest of my digital advertising or my overall marketing strategy. So I think it's very important to focus on those KPIs, things like viewability, things like exposure, things like frequency capping. Simply enough not to overexpose people with your ad in a space where they're anyway way overexposed with advertising within a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we are actually done when it comes to the main part of the discussion, but I really want us to think about the future. At least I see in-game and the future as really bright. And what do you see that the future holds for in-game in general and during these kind of events like World Cup? Could you give your own perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, the path is pretty clear from my side. Gaming is becoming increasingly accepted with advertisers. It's less stigmatized. The content being created here is becoming so increasingly realistic, and not only entertaining on a on a gaming look and feel kind of level, but it's actually competing with cinematics. If you look at Modern Warfare 2 now, outsold pretty much every Hollywood movie ever. The look and feel, the graphics of games engines are catapulting us into an entirely new space. So the kind of traction that this medium sees with audiences is only increasing. And if you look at how the paradigm shift is going on between the generations, even my generation is already playing at large scale, and younger generations are choosing this as their prime medium of entertainment. So advertisers that want to stay relevant over time have to leave their footprint here. And in order to do that, of course, it's essential to offer efficient and accessible approaches in order to do that.
Yeah, that's true. But you mentioned that in-game is less stigmatized. However, could you give an advice for an advertiser who is still a bit skeptical going in-game? Or what would be your advice for that advertiser?
Well, you simply have to look at things like professional footballers. I mean, David Beckham was one of the first ones to actually buy an esports team and get really invested. But if you look at the social media channels of professional footballers, of Leo Messi or Mbappe, some of the highest paid and most influential social media celebrities in the world, a lot of their content already is about gaming. They tend to meet and play FIFA on PlayStation together and post their results. There's celebrity tournaments. There's of course a really cool agency tournament going on right now where people can pre-play the event. But also let's look at esports in general, which is actually starting to rank up to real world or real life sports. I don't really want to say real life sports because people are, especially younger audience, are perceiving esports as real sports. It's not something virtual, it's not something digital, if you even make that differentiation, but it's something very real. It's something that is bringing a lot of attention, that is attracting a lot of money, and therefore we'll see increasing success over time as well. So here's a place to be if you want to be popular, if you want to upload your brand with the sympathy and the engagement that's happening around these types of entertainment.
Yeah, and I think like gaming as an entertainment medium is great because it's so versatile. Like we can talk about esports, mobile gaming, PC gaming. So like there are so many ways how brands can utilize this channel and reach those wanted results. So like I think definitely there's a lot of ways how different brands can tap in and not think like too narrowly that gaming is just about younger kids doing like through a smartphone, for example. So I'm really excited that the market is so big. We just have to we have to change the perspective, I guess, and it is changing, which is really great.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, especially when you look at the different types of games and verticals. It's very easy to compare it to established, or let's say with advertisers, more established types of entertainment. If it's movies or TV, where you have certain verticals that your brand fits in very well with. Of course, you have more female-oriented shows or movies where a brand would feel more comfortable if they have a female-oriented product. But the same happens in gaming as well. And you have all these verticals, and you can actually go contextually very, very close to your audience and be relevant in a place where their attention is really hovering. And football is just one of these great examples. For a sports brand, and we know this from research, we know this from first-party data from the games, people that play certain sports in real life will play a similar video game and the other way around. Because your interest is just revolving so much around this topic. So there's a highly relevant space.
Yeah, Cool. I really learned a lot. I hope that our attendees learned something as well, and will take bits and pieces and maybe use it during their advertising campaigns. And now we're ready for the Q&A. So this is the time to add your questions in the Q&A box, so Hendrik could answer them right now. So yeah, okay, I can see a few questions. So one of the questions is, what businesses do you usually run in-game ads?
This varies actually as much as the types of game vary that you have. Of course, we mentioned football, sports brands, but also it might be, you know, the classical esports advertisers, which are energy drinks or computer hardware, people that feel very endemic in the space. But by now we've already seen other brands really investing. Automotive has really gone hard into esports, and big FMCG companies are starting to discover the potentials. So pretty much anything that you will find in the supermarket or pretty much on Amazon is something that you can definitely also advertise in game. So the variation here is endless.
That's true. And essentially, I think for the advertisers, you just need to understand why the audience is relevant for them. For example, you know, a lot of the gamers eat during or drink during their gameplay. So for FMCG brand, this is a great way to promote their product. And there is a really great question about AA Games. AAA Games. I'm having a hard time imagining how blended in-game ads can go beyond the mobile games. What do you think about the AAA Games selling their ad space inside the games? Can't imagine playing Battlefield 5 and seeing Coca-Cola ads. So what are your perception on these big games, big companies like Sony? What are they doing? Maybe you have some insights.
Yeah, our approach, our company's approach to these high quality, high end games on PC and console devices is that there's an opportunity to take a hyper realistic environment, and Unreal Engine 5 now is creating worlds that are very hard to tell apart from real life, from the outside world. These environments actually demand for something realistic in terms of ads as well. The classic example, you walk down Times Square or you walk down Trafalgar Square, which basically is a showroom for innovative out-of-home advertisement. How would it look if you did not find any brands here? How would it look in a football stadium if you didn't have an Adidas, Nike, Puma ad on the side of the pitch? It would look very strange. So a part of the realism of the game, and this is something that definitely is super relevant in AAA games, a part of the game is reflecting the outside world. So we're enabling that. I think this is something that's going to play an increasingly big part. I don't have to speculate on this because we recently went live with a really big game named Dakar Desert Rally, a rally event that is, because of all the attention that has gone into it for decades, it's filled with brands. Not only the automotive brands that are taking part, but also the supplier brands and also big brands around it that have taken this advantage of this big exposure over the years. And now we are bringing this to the digital space, making it available for premium brands and premium advertisers to leverage in a premium game as well.
Yeah, and I saw like at least beginning of the year, Sony announced that they're going to allow in-game ads on PlayStation. So we're seeing like these big companies going in-game. There is an addition to the question, but Battlefield 5 is in the World War II environment. I hope I pronounce it correctly. What about RPG and fantasy games?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, in the past, advertisers and brands with different kinds of product have been engaged in trying to play a part in these environments as well. Is it the closest to heart, the closest to mind? Probably not right now, not at a directly scalable level, but it's not off the table. I would say here, and there's great examples of creative agencies and creative brands that have worked together in order to make it work, in order to access these kinds of environments. It's not as obvious, but it actually doesn't really have to be. The question is, do you want to break the immersion from a gamer perspective? And Anzu, as a company that's put its mission to doing gamer-friendly ads, we're not going to focus on bringing modern day ads into medieval times games. That's definitely not going to happen. And I think it doesn't have to be, because there's so much more space left around that where eyeballs and attention are happening, which are relevant to advertisers. So we don't have to break the immersion of a fantasy play or of a old or even medieval or even World War II game.
Thanks for the answer. And there is another one: how to measure the success of in-game advertising campaigns. You mentioned some KPIs about viewability. Anything else that advertisers should focus to?
Yeah, the basic idea is to make it as accessible and as comparable to any other digital channel as possible. So we're working with KPIs such as ad viewability, time of exposure, reach in terms of unique users, and a frequency cap that you can have and a long-term exposure to a user in this channel, and then enrich it with the opportunities that you have in this channel, which are the high immersion, the high amount of attention. In social media, we talk about thumb stopping. You actually have to create something outstanding just in order for a consumer to even give the ad a chance. In our case, we have the full attention of the consumer on this advertising channel. Now we need to make it count, and we need to make it accountable for advertisers in order for them to have the confidence that their advertising budgets are very well spent. And in terms of research and in terms of proof of concept, we have tons of data to support that this is an outstanding opportunity.
Yeah, and I think with in-game, even though a few years ago it seemed that the limitation is that ads are not clickable, and why should advertisers do it long term? Now in-game is disrupting the digital advertising by offering alternative metrics like, as you said, attention, time in view. So it's only interesting to see when the perception of the advertiser will change, that they will not focus only to clicks, but would consider other metrics to evaluate how in-game actually impact their brand perception, and look how the in-game changes impact their long-term opportunities.
Yeah, well, in-game advertising certainly doesn't have the aspiration of replacing every other type of advertising completely. There's certain things that intrinsic in-game ads do very well, and that is upper funnel awareness and brand recognition, brand consideration even. If you're looking for a conversion, maybe there's better channels for that, of course. But looking at the digital space overall and at what we've been doing over the past 15, 20 years that I've been in this business, I can certainly say that valuable and really high quality channels that have been paying into the brand value and the brand perception have not really satisfied what I think is an essential part of brand building and keeping a consumer brand top of mind when the final point of purchase is there. Because when you look at, I don't actually have a number on that, but I would say that probably less than 10% of consumer products bought on this planet are something that would be instantly bought after a click. So there's huge potential around that. And we've worked with lots of big consumer brands that have longer purchase funnels and that need to stay in the relevant set of the consumer. And here we can serve an excellent quality return on invest.
Fantastic. I'm really hopeful that InGame will definitely become a standard channel for many of the advertisers. And we have a bit of time for the last question. So it's written why, but I think it was more like, what should advertisers look for when choosing a partner for launching an in-game ad campaign?
I would say the most important things are making it as easy as possible to get in the game. So the accessibility should be as high as possible. Of course, being able to access the inventory through a DSP is essential. Be able to use maybe standard, maybe special creatives at standard formats. Be able to use video and display creative ads, and being able to audit the campaigns in the same way that you would with third parties like Moat or IAS, and make your campaigns accountable and actually fit them into your digital ecosystem at a scalable level as well. Because of course you don't want to go all in at the first step, but you want to have a scalable invest. We have a very low opening threshold. So, but at the same time, we have huge amounts of users that you can scale up to. So here's a lot of flexibility. And I think that's what advertisers need most in order to take that big first step.
Yeah, so accessibility, how it fits to the media channels, a lot of great insights. I hope that our attendees found the insights very useful, and I hope they will implement them into their upcoming in-game campaign. Is it going to be through a DSP or directly? And yeah, this is actually all for our panel discussion. I really want to thank again Hendrik for joining it and sharing your point of view and sharing a lot of great insights from the market. Some things were known, some definitely I heard for the first time, and it actually broadened my own perspective on in-game advertising, which I hope I will use in practice when talking with the brands. So this was really, really exciting. And yeah, I hope that we will have more of these discussions in the future.
I hope so too. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And yeah, see you and have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you.